The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Will moving patients from hospital beds to long-term care beds, perhaps not of their choosing, relieve pressure on the healthcare system as the Ontario government hopes? Tonight, we're asking that. Also, ahead of this weekend's Conservative leadership finale, Steve Paikin talks to longtime party activist Tasha Curtin about her book Plotting a Winning Path for that party. Then, mapping the streets of Hamilton with our Ontario hubs. It's Friday, September 9th, and that's coming up on the agenda. The healthcare crunch that built month over month throughout the pandemic reached new levels this summer as emergency rooms closed and access to care seemed more precarious than ever. In response, the Ontario government just passed the More Beds, Better Care Act that, among other measures, enables hospitals to move people to long-term care if appropriate or bill them for staying if they refuse to go. Will it work? Is that fair? For their views, we're joined in Kingston, Ontario, Dr. David Pecora, President and CEO of Kingston Health Sciences Centre, Dr. Samir Sinha, Director of Geriatrics at Mount Sinai and the University Health Network Hospitals and Associate Professor of Medicine at the University of Toronto, and Jane Meadus, Staff Lawyer at the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly. Welcome to you for joining us in studio. Thank you so much, David, for joining us on the line. Dr. Sinha, I'm going to come to you first. Do you consider Bill 7 to be an effective solution to addressing Ontario's hospitals' bed crisis?
I honestly don't think it's an effective solution. I think it's certainly something that's been put out there as an idea. But the fundamental thing that we forgot to mention about Bill 7 is that it fundamentally takes away the rights of people to choose where they want to live. It's something about saying create more beds and provide better care. But when we're actually talking about people who have to choose where they're going to live, for example, we've always enshrined that fundamental right. And right now, we don't really have much in the way of empty beds in our system. And now saying to people that, look, we know you've chosen up to 5 beds. We know that you don't want to go to this other home, but we're going to put you there. We're going to shove you there, and we have the right to do that without your consent, if you will, to choose and get you placed in that bed. This is the fundamental issue that I have a problem with this bill, because it's actually attacking the rights of older adults, some of our most vulnerable people in our province, in order to try and solve a solution when there are bigger things that we could be doing and tackling to not have gotten into this situation and to, frankly, get us out of the situation.
Very good. David, I want to get your take on it. What are your thoughts when we talk about Bill 7 freeing up more beds in hospitals?
Well, there's no one solution to this. And, I look at the availability of long-term care beds in our region. It's a limited access point. Nobody likes to see beds sitting empty when we've got patients waiting in hallways and patients waiting to get in for acute care. And so I think, this is not a new issue. We've been having conversations with patients and families for many years. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I've been doing this for a long, long time. And, no two patients or families are the same. And we really, try to find individualized solutions that work best for patients and family. And there are always challenges. There's always complexities, and no two issues are the same. And trying to find ways to nudge patients and families to think seriously about moving into a long-term care facility that may well provide a better care and scenario for them than sitting in an acute care bed, I think it's an important conversation to have with patients and families.
All right, Jane, I'm going to bring you in from a legal point of view. What are some potential problems with the logistics of sending elderly to long-term care facilities with Bill 7?
Right. So first of all, we're, just as Samir said, it's the fundamental right of someone to consent is being just overridden here. We're also looking at a system that's broken. We have a lot of issues. And again, we're taking seniors and using them to fix the problem. We saw this at the beginning of COVID. We shoved everybody out of the hospitals into long-term care. That didn't work very well, and we're doing it again. Every time there's a problem, we use seniors. We are allowing the home and community care services to send out information, your private personal health information, to anyone, any long-term care home they want without your consent. Those documents have a lot of information about you, very private information about you, about behaviors, about different kinds of medical issues that you've had, to go anywhere without your consent. And in fact, it may in fact be explicitly against your consent. You may absolutely say, I do not want this to go, and yet we're going to make that go. The act itself is very wishy-washy on a lot of its what it's talking about. So it talks about people having to make reasonable efforts. It talks about it doesn't tell us like how many kilometers away, what is going to be the parameters. We haven't seen the regulations yet. There's a lot of really questionable things in there. It's also it seems to be allowing physicians and nurse practitioners and nurses in hospitals to determine eligibility. And what you have to understand right now is that hospitals, in fact, don't have a place in our long-term care placement system. They complete application forms. There are discharge planners who talk to you, but it's really the home and community care services that do that. And so they're supposed to be neutral, and now you have people whose prime objective is to get you out of the hospital. And we've been fighting that I've been at ACE for 27 years, and I've been doing that fight for 27 years.
I want to get David in on that to respond to some of what Jane had said there.
So I think there are some very real practical rights issues. We deal with that all the time. And that's why our intent, our practice has always been to try to manage challenges like this with a conversation, trying to tailor solutions to the needs of the family. We don't send people long distances away. It's more a question of trying to match what patients wish in terms of their preferred homes, and hopefully they will stay to preferred home. Not all want to, versus homes that they don't want to go to. But we do know that an acute care bed is not the right place either, and there are a lot of patients waiting to come in who need access to that. So it's there are. I recognize the rights of seniors for sure. We all have had elderly patients who've gone through this. I did certainly, and it wasn't easy and it wasn't fun. But on the hospital side, I can give you some scenarios of patients with real significant challenges waiting to come into hospital for cardiac surgery. I've had family members call me about a relative that they see declining week over week, waiting for cardiac surgery that's been canceled 3 times because of beds. And these patients invariably have other medical complexities, and their deconditioning and their fitness for surgery is at risk. And it creates a lot of anxiety for the patient, for the family, and for our team here. We want to get these people in and care for them. We've got patients with otherwise healthy, active patients with arthritis who are caregivers themselves, and they need to have their hip or knee replaced in order to be able to have an active life and look after their role in their family. And then every day I go down to our emergency department and see patients literally piled up in the hallway there with their family members in far from our ideal circumstance. So, there are challenges everywhere in the system, and long-term care for sure. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And, I think hospitals want to be part of finding those solutions. And we certainly have implemented some alternate paths to compensate for the limitations in home and community care and long-term care, which I can tell you about if you're interested.
Samir, I want to come to you. You've also had some very tough conversations with some of your patients in terms of what Bill 7 might mean to them. Do you mind sharing some of those conversations as well?
Yeah, I think the fundamental issue here is that a lot of patients are being stuck in a situation where we're now pitting sectors against each other. I agree, we need more beds in hospital, and we actually need more freed up beds, but part of the problem is we're losing nurses on the regular, not only from our hospitals, but also from our long-term care homes, from our home care system as well. We had 4,000 people when this government took power in 2018 on the home care waiting list. We have 16,000 people now. So more people are waiting in our hospitals is ALC patients right now, because they can't get home care to return to their own homes, they can't get rehabilitation care, they can't get palliative, they can't get hospice care. Yet we're targeting this small group of people who often have made choices, said, I'm willing to go to one of these 5 long-term care homes, but I also appreciate there's 39,000 people on the wait list right now for one of the 79,000 beds. So now, as we say, yes, all of these conversations, people don't go onto a list without conversations happening that protect their rights. But now what we're saying is, well, frankly, if I can say this, it's a shit show right now. And you know what? We've got people waiting in the ER who need this bed. There's a bed over in that home that lost 50 people during the pandemic that the military were involved in. I know nobody wants to go there, but you know what? They told us in a private conversation not involving you, they can take care of you. Let's go and wait and see. And don't worry, you can wait there for your preferred option, one of the homes you're willing to live in. That's the conversations. So we're talking about conversations that are allowed to happen now. And really what this act creates is structural coercion. Because now I can go to a patient saying, I know you don't want to go to one of those homes, but I found a home that you can go to. If you say no, I now have the power to charge you, one hospital is set up to $1,800 a day, if you say no to going to that option. And most of these patients don't have money to buy private home care. They may not have family members who can take care of them and bring them home. So these are incredibly vulnerable people. And that's why when I was talking to one of my patients the other day, saying, they were saying, like, I'm not sure if we ever want to go back to the hospital, because we realize this is a place where if I go and I end up needing long-term care, they might not respect my choices anymore. They might have the power now to force me into a home I don't want to go to. And when I said, that's what could happen, they said, well, then I'd rather die. And honestly, this is the conversations that we're allowing ourselves to happen by saying, we don't respect your rights right now because someone else needs a bed, because our government has frankly allowed a system to collapse further when there are structural things that we could have done to not allow us to start pitting sectors against each other and frankly stripping the rights of older people and saying, who's next? We're taking away the rights of mom and dad now to make choices in hospital. Next, we might make the choices and say, as an orthopedic patient comes in, having trouble getting consent, whether or not let's just go ahead and do the surgery, because frankly, the longer we wait to get them into the OR, that's gumming up a bed. What are the next rights that we're going to strip to deal with this situation we're in?
All right, I want to get to some boards and some stats here. Data suggests that 40% of the ALC, alternate level of care patients, are waiting for a space in long-term care. But in an opinion piece that you co-written for the Globe and Mail, you shared something slightly different. You wrote, the majority of patients waiting in hospital who no longer need to be there are not actually waiting for LTC beds. A significant portion of these alternate level of care patients are waiting beds in a rehabilitation unit, palliative care unit, hospice, or for care home. Before I get to you on that, I do want to get David in there to get in on a point that Samir had made there, but also on what he said in that piece as well.
So this afternoon, we have 18% of our beds occupied with patients who've been designated ALC, and half of them are, half of that 18%, so 9%, are waiting for a long-term care bed, and the other 50% are waiting for the sorts of services that Dr. Sinha said, home and community care, rehab, other types of care out there. So that's us this afternoon.
So, Mayor, I want to get back to you in terms of that quote and sort of the numbers. Can you sort of explain that a little bit in terms of the breakdown there? You're talking that majority of them are not actually indeed waiting for long-term care.
Yeah, and this really speaks to the whole system issues, right? It's not just our hospitals, and it's not people just like, Dr. Pecora, who's having trouble managing kind of his services, right? Without that, hospitals are meant to be providing, hospital services. But when you don't have enough home care, when you don't have enough rehabilitation care, when you don't have enough long-term care services, this creates the crunch that we're in that then starts pitting each other because, frankly, hospitals have to provide care. And I don't know any person waiting for long-term care in hospital who's saying, I just want to stay here and they want to go to a long-term care home, but they want to go to a home of their choosing. The fundamental problems we have right now is that when you actually don't resource the system well enough, you don't actually have, for example, enough home care, the conversations I have on a daily basis with my patients and family is I say to them, Right. So right now there's 15,000 people on the home care wait list. We can't really offer you much in the way of home care. I had one family being offered a few hours a week, and this is someone who needs 24/7 supports. The family's like, could you give us 2 hours a day? Like, they're negotiating. And when we say we can't do that, then they say, well, I guess we have to wait here for long-term care. That's not what the families want. That's not what the hospital wants, but that's what our current system is placing us all in these intractable situations. If we had a lot more home care, Kai tells us if we had more home care, about 10 to 30% of the people in our long-term care homes currently wouldn't even need to be there. If we had more home care, hospitals would be able to discharge more people home and wouldn't need them to wait there. And this is the problem. We don't have a right-sized system. And if you go to countries like Denmark where they adequately provide home care, they actually don't have an ALC crisis. In fact, when I talked to their leadership about what we have here, they said, why are you holding people hostage in your hospital? Why don't you just provide them more home care? That's what we do. We provide up on average 6 to 7 hours a day for people who need it. And by doing that, they have their own homes, they have their own beds. Why would you be so mean to your people? And I'm like, because we're systematically defunding other parts of our system to meet the needs of an aging population. So that's why we're having conversations like this, where we're debating whether or not people's rights should matter around where they might spend the rest of their lives.
Jane, I'm going to get you in on this. The long-term care minister stated that it's up to the patients and families to decide whether they want to be moved. Critics like yourself say that patients are ultimately being coerced into it. Some of that.
So yeah, and I just wanted to mention that, not only would home care allow people to go home, it would also prevent people from coming into the hospital to begin with. So if they had proper care, they wouldn't be coming into the hospital. And I think we really always are putting out fires instead of preventing the fires from starting. We also have cut down on all our chronic care facilities. The hospitals have closed the entire units. And so people with very high levels of care, who are the ones who get stuck in hospital, because really long-term care can't take care of them, they're being pushed into long-term care. And so that's a big problem. So with respect to sort of what's been going on, so as I said, I've been doing this a long time. I would say for the last 10 years, the issue of ALC has been the top issue in our office. We get between 500 to 700 cases a year on ALC. So this is not a new issue. Hospitals are trying to push people out. We have hospitals preventing people from applying for long-term care because then they can't throw them out of the hospital if they're waiting for long-term care. We already have hospitals who threaten people and say, if you don't do what we say, which could be go to a retirement home, go home, go to your daughter's house. We have hospitals regularly telling us, if you don't do those things, we're going to charge you $1,800 a day. That's not legal, but they do it all the time. Once this legislation's in place, we have the legislation, we yet to have the regulations. So it's not, as of today, actually implemented, although we have already seen hospitals basically pretending it is. Once it's been implemented, you are going to get a legal offer, and then if you refuse because they can't physically take you and put you into a car or an ambulance, because that would be an assault and a detention and all sorts of things, they are going to say, you have now refused a offer, and we are going to charge you the uninsured rate. So you are no longer entitled to your hospital stay by OHIP. We can't throw you out because it's not safe, so they're going to have to stay there, and they're going to charge you the uninsured rate.
Should I jump in there? I have this right, that Premier Ford said that his government would not charge patients that uninsured rate. Even so, I think I have the quote, I can pretty well guarantee it's not going to be $1,800.
$1,799.
$1,799, all right.
Well, I've certainly seen $1,800, okay? I've seen more than that, actually. Basically, what they usually do is they use whatever the rate is for the interprovincial rate, which is what a province will charge another province if one of their people ends up in one of our hospitals. So that's usually around the rate. They're not really tied to that. The Minister of Long-Term Care has consistently said this is legislation that's been around since 1979. It's only $62 a day. Unfortunately, he's not talking about the same thing. When you're an ALC patient and waiting for a long-term care home, the hospital is by right entitled to charge you the same basic rate that you would pay in a long-term care home. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about, so that happens every day. It happens in your hospital, I'm sure to everybody you have, I'm sure it happens in your hospital. So every patient who's made ALC, except for a few exceptions, are charged this with a rate reduction if they're poor. This is, we're not going to allow you to be insured at all. So you're not entitled to any insured services through our hospital, and we are now going to charge you $1,800 a day. Will every hospital do that? No. Premier Ford doesn't have a say in it. That's not up to Premier Ford. It's not in the legislation, so unless he passes a law that says it's not allowed, the hospitals are entitled to do that, and they're going to do that. And there's memos from the ministry that say they're entitled to do that.
David, I have to come to you for a response on that one. A lot to unpack there, so.
We do charge some patients $62 a day, the copay that's equivalent to room and board. We haven't charged $1,800 or anything close to that and have no intention of doing that. I think it's a difficult situation, and I understand the comments that are being made. Really, there's a lot of system solutions that need to be found. This is what Ontario health teams are meant to be all about, improving care in the community so that from a hospital's perspective, the upstream and downstream care is a lot better. Patients only need to come to hospital when they absolutely need to be there, and they can be discharged to the right setting when it's time for them to go. And we need to have a better integrated system. And that means even more integration with home and community care, and certainly more integration with long-term care, because that's been a missing element in our system so far. And hospitals want to be part of that because we are part of the system. As I mentioned earlier, we here, our experience with long-term care has been better. I think throughout the early phases of the pandemic, Kieran Moore was our medical officer of health, and they were very proactive with long-term care homes. And I think the success rate that they had mitigating the sort of damage we saw elsewhere was really excellent and highly publicized. So, these homes can step up when they get the right supports, they have the right standards, they're consistently inspected, et cetera. And they need to have the right funding. And Ontario health teams are going to be part of the solution for the future, I think. It's going to take time to get there. In the meantime, we're working with Ontario Health and Home and Community Care on a couple of programs. One of them is called a transitional care unit, where we have a contract with a retirement home that has empty beds, lots of empty beds. And so we provide the co-pays through that contract and enhanced restorative care to create this transitional care unit for patients who need some rehab services. Now even some patients who are likely going to be designated for long-term care and are waiting. And we also have a KHSC at-home program with enhanced home care services through an at-home program with a private provider. When home and community care support services doesn't have the staffing or the capability or even the capacity to manage some of those patients, and we work with home and community care in partnership, that program has been incredibly successful. Frankly, it's kept our surgical program alive. Last fiscal year, it saved us about 40,000 beds, we estimate. The patient satisfaction rates and quality indicators are really very, very good. And so we need to look at new models of care for the future. We can't just keep repeating and repeating the past.
All right, I'm going to get to a quote. This is a quote from another David Walker, professor of emergency medicine and policy studies at Queen's University. He writes, "I tend to identify with those poor souls who are designated ALC, for whom an acute care hospital bed is not a good or the right place to be deteriorating daily, for whom a nearby second or third choice LTC bed would be far better than where they find themselves. Of course, more and better home care, transitional care units, and more LTC flex would help a lot." Samir, I want to get your response on that. How do you sum that up?
I completely agree. The key is we're not talking about whether it's your first choice, your second or fifth choice. You are allowed currently under our legislation, under our regulations, to choose up to 5 homes. What we're talking about is if at Dr. Pecora's hospital, another hospital, what this legislation now says, if we don't like your 5 homes and we don't want to put in the extra effort and our dollars, frankly, to find alternative solutions, what we now can do is have a conversation with the home that nobody wants to send their loved one to. We can use your health information, we can get you accepted, and now, instead of working in your 5 choices and finding these alternative programs, we can simply say, look, we don't like your 5 choices because you're going to be waiting here 2 or 3 weeks, a month. We found this home up to 300 kilometers away, or in Southern Ontario, up to 100 kilometers away. And you know what? They've got a bed. And if you say no to that offer, we have the legal right now, through this legislation, to charge you up to, maybe not $1,800 a day, but name your figure, and it's going to be higher than $62 a day. That's really what we're talking about. I'm not saying that we should be holding people hostage in hospitals. We need to have the right types of care in our system that we need. But right now, we had a good system, or key investments that I fought for, called the High Intensity for Support Services for Older People. It was extra investments for home care, more home care, so people could leave hospital and go wait in their own homes. But instead, what happened at the end of this last fiscal year? Cut. Right? Now, I've just heard that they're going to be renewing it after I've been protesting for more home care dollars. So they're going to renew it. So we're going to start and stop instead of building a strong home care system that gives people alternatives. Instead, we're now just passing legislation that's saying, we don't care about your 2nd or 3rd, 4th, or 5th choice. We are now going to go beyond your choices and find you a home that you didn't want to go into, but frankly will take you, because if they don't reach their 97% occupancy, they don't get their full funding from the ministry. And right now, as of October 1st, what people aren't talking about is the ministry has also said for homes that can't reach that 97% occupancy, there's a reason why they're having trouble reaching that 97, because people don't want to go there. You know what? We now have a way to coerce people into those beds. So you know what? Your shareholders can get paid handsomely. These people won't necessarily get to be in the care they want. And sorry if your family can't easily visit you because it wasn't one of your preferred choices, but hopefully you won't die soon enough so you can get to one of your preferred choices. This is honestly why I find this bill so egregious and why I've been protesting so much. It's not about creating problems in the system. It's about focusing on the right solutions as opposed to saying that it comes at the cost of people's rights.
Jane, I'm going to come with you. You have the last word, the last minute here. If you do not support this legislation,
yes.
Do you think there's an alternative way for hospitals and LTC facilities to work together?
I think there are ways that they can work together. I think one of the things is with Ontario Health Teams, long-term care is often not even part of that conversation. They're not part of the Ontario Health Teams. It is in some places, but not everywhere. And so that remains to be seen. I think that people need to have the conversations. There are other ways if people think that substitute decision makers are picking up inappropriate homes, like only homes with a 10-year waiting list. There are other measures that can be done. My big concern is that we're taking people who are very heavy care, who can't get out of the hospital, and are going to be putting them into places that can't care for them, the ones that Samir was just describing. I'm also concerned about these transitional units because they're actually not part of retirement homes. They may be housed in them and they don't have any oversight. I'm very concerned about those units as well. And I think we really have to stop saying it's a seniors problem. It's a systems problem. And this, frankly, isn't going to fix it, because what's the real problem here is we don't have enough nurses.
All right, I guess we're going to have to leave it there. Jane, Samir, David, I want to really thank you for taking the time and really appreciate you guys joining us on the program.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Take care. Pleasure.
In the last 3 federal elections, the Conservative Party won plenty of votes, but not enough to win. Political consultant and longtime Conservative activist Tasha Kiridan, who almost threw her hat into the ring for this year's leadership contest, maps out what she sees as a road to victory for her party in her new book. It's called The Right Path: How Conservatives Can Unite, Inspire, and Take Canada Forward. And Tasha Kiridan joins us now here in the studio. Great to see you again.
Great to see you too.
Let's do a little background here, because you posit the notion that the Conservative Party is kind of a big blue tent, mostly with 2 different kinds of conservatives, right? You've got club conservatives and convoy conservatives. Who are they?
They are the new subtype of conservative. We've long talked about fiscal, social, and other ones, but since the pandemic, and really since I think the convoy itself came to Ottawa earlier this year, you've seen a division, and it played out within this leadership, of people who supported, if not the means, but the aims of the convoy, who felt that pandemic restrictions were too severe, who felt the government overstepped in terms of invoking the Emergencies Act and this kind of thing, and politicians, including many, and the leader, Candice Bergen of the Conservative Party, who stood with the supporters of the convoy, at least in the early period of it.
Had her picture taken with them.
It did indeed. Pose for photos, all that stuff. And then you have what I call the club conservatives, and I reference that because in a way, the convoy conservatives created them. It's, we want to say, the elite of the Conservative Party, but not just elites. People who've been involved for a long time. People who may be a member of the Albany Club in Toronto, which is why I gave them the name Club Conservatives. The so-called establishment, mostly centered, I would say, in Eastern Canada, who have been long-time either Bill Davis conservatives or Red Tories or centre-right conservatives, but who did not share the perception the convoy conservatives did. And in fact, law and order is probably the biggest dividing issue between them, is how they saw the convoy and how it played out. So
we know they have a lot of things not in common. Do they have anything that unites them?
They do have things, and this is the thing that this leadership has, I think, failed to bring out as much, because it's really focused on divisions. But they have the commonality of fiscal conservatism. They have the commonality of believing in an alternative to the current government. They're united in saying, throw the bums out, but they are not united in the approach that is being taken, i.e., who are you appealing to? What is the basis of your positions, your rhetoric, the approach, the cast of it? Because the convoy conservatives are really populists. In a sense, they're not fully conservative at all. The aims and means of populism are actually what conservatism was created to fight, because conservatism was created against the French Revolution, as we know, back in 1789, which was a populist uprising. It was a more cautious approach to social change than populism represented. Populism is really, let's go fast, let's go hard. Conservatism is more look to the past, look to tradition, incrementalism. Like Stephen Harper actually was quite a conservative. He was very incrementalist.
Kind of conservatism without the guillotine.
Yes, conservatives truly do not love guillotines. Edmund Burke did not like the guillotine.
Gotcha. Which one are you?
I would say I'm the common sense Canadian who's kind of stuck in the middle. I've never been a member of the Albany. They've tried many times, and I love going there, but I wouldn't say I'm establishment. I think I'm center-right, definitely. I did not support the convoy. This is true. I didn't support it because I felt that if it had gone on for just the weekend, I think I probably would have understood. But subjugating the city of Ottawa and then border crossings to the kind of obstruction that was there, the way it devolved into a lack of law and order, which is something that a true conservative really upholds. That is just one of the pillars of conservatism, is you need order, not for order's sake, but so that everyone operates on the same playing field. Everyone knows what to expect. And people in Ottawa certainly didn't expect to have the horns honking, 24/7.
Okay, you say you're not a convoy conservative. You say you're not a club conservative. But you had your own radio show, you've had newspaper columns, you've written books. I mean, you've almost run for the leader. You're one of these people who the convoy conservatives look at and say, come on, she's a club conservative, aren't you?
You know what I actually realized in writing this book is that for all the demonization that's been happening for elites that we've heard of in the last year, it's unfortunate because it ignores the fact that in this country, one of the things we aspire to, it's the so-called Canadian dream, is to come from nothing and to reach a certain level, whether it's elite or, like you said, influential or other, by your merits, by your work, which is my story, quite frankly, the story of most, I would say, new Canadians. The aspirations for their children are that they can become a club conservative, right? It's not that they want them to be held back. So in demonizing people who have achieved something, and many of them, if not most of them, through their own work, it's actually contradictory to what conservatism is, which is the idea that, you know what, we want people to have a fair playing field, have equality of opportunity, work hard, and reap the fruits of those labors. So am I a club? Some people might consider me a club conservative. I certainly wasn't born one.
Right. What influence do you think Donald Trump has had on the convoy conservatives in this country?
Well, I opened the opening introduction with that. It's when Trump came to Canada, and I say that tongue-in-cheek because he physically didn't, but he did have an influence, I think, in the political culture, what we consider acceptable forms of expression. By acceptable, I mean lines that we probably wouldn't have crossed before, swearing at the Prime Minister, lots of, F Trudeau bumper stick. That's become, I see them everywhere, right? A certain vulgarization of how we express ourselves. And I find that unfortunate. I understand people get really angry. And people have been really angry through the pandemic for a lot of valid reasons. But it's the way we feel we can let that out that he has brought to our culture. And also, I think the sense also that, again, this division between the elites, drain the swamp, this kind of language. Well, he is, if anyone's an elite in America, it would be Donald Trump. That's the irony. But he plays...
A billionaire New York property developer, you think?
I think.
Yeah.
And he plays, but this is the thing, he uses people's fears and the issues they've been with, the common people, as you would say, he uses them to get his vision across, and he plays on that. And I find that's what populists do, and that's why I'm not a populist, because I see populism not as the voice of the people. It's a voice of some people, but also the use of people and their problems to advance a political agenda, and I have trouble with that.
I don't want to spend too much time on the current leadership campaign that is
wrapping up.
Culminating on the 10th of September, absolutely. But, obviously a number of people have made the observation that Pierre Poilievre seems to be running the Donald Trump playbook in some respects. Certainly with the appeal to gatekeepers and populism and the elites who are trying to hold you down and all of that business. But in fairness, Mr. Poilievre has gained a lot of attention talking about freedom. Mm-hmm. And that is a message that has a lot of resonance in this country at the moment. You've said it really shouldn't be about freedom, Pierre. It should be about opportunity. What's the difference? Because
a poll just came out validating this, that 70% of Canadians think less of politicians who supported the convoy. And the convoy slogan was freedom. But the freedom that the convoy was advocating was not the traditional conception of freedom, either conservative or, I might add, small L liberal, which is, freedom to achieve your dreams, freedom to do what you wish, say what you wish. It was freedom, essentially, that was circumscribed by the pandemic, freedom to not get a vaccine, freedom to not wear a mask. Those freedoms were the freedoms that were taken away. Yes, in a way, that's true. But the point is that that is not what freedom is only about. And that is why a lot of people look on this and say, well, the freedom I see, the freedom I would champion is when, Gorbachev, when Ronald Reagan said, please, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. Or when Brian Mulroney stood up and said, we need freedom in South Africa for, under apartheid, for black people who were oppressed to a point that we can't even imagine. People in the convoy, you lost freedoms, but it's a different level. And that is why I feel that by saying freedom, and also it's seen as a dog whistle, unfortunately, which really makes me sad, because as a conservative, it is a pillar of conservatism, is individual freedoms. But in the United States, it's also seen as a dog whistle to racism. It's become that. And as a result, when you use just the word freedom and you use that, it turns off a lot of people too. It turns off a lot of new Canadians. I spoke to hundreds of people in writing this book, and a message I heard from new Canadians over and over was, you know what? When I hear freedom, I hear a dog whistle. It's code. I don't believe it's talking about freedom, and it's not what I'm looking for. I want a better life for my kids. But that's what people in the convoy want too. This is the irony, is that you can get that sense of being blocked and frustrated, because really you could appeal to that and say, we're going to fix that through opportunity.
That's
right?
where the commonality is.
That's where the commonality, and that's what I'm saying. There's commonality. It's just not being expressed, and language is important because, if you use certain words, you will turn off a base of voters that otherwise you could get, in addition to those that are there. And you need that base to win. We're not going to win just with one small segment. We're not going to win with the base we have now. Well,
this raises the issue, and I remember hearing this expression when I was a kid all the time: can the center hold? And, as I look at politics, admittedly from the outside, not as an insider as you are, and I don't say that in a pejorative way, it's wonderful to be an insider. I'm looking for the center these days. I wonder where it is. I see a huge chunk of the Conservative Party that wants to be very much over on the populist, grievance-based right. I see a federal Liberal Party, which is acting more like the New Democrats acted when I was younger. And I ask myself, not can the center hold, but where is it? Does it even exist anymore? What's the answer?
Well, it does. And that's the common sense Canadians I talk about in the book, that's where I would put myself. It's the majority of people who look at the two extremes and say, I don't see myself in either. I'm looking for good government. I'm not looking for too much government, but I'm looking for good government. I'm looking for a fair playing field. I'm looking for lower taxes. I don't want to be over-governed. I'm not interested in that. But at the same time, I want to know that people who are there are not taking this in directions of either conspiracy theories or extreme woke politics, that they're interested in my well-being, right? And there's no other agenda in there that's being played just for votes, because that's what you end up feeling. And those people, I mean, there are groups, Center Ice Canadians is a group that I am involved in as well. Rick Peterson started that. Initially, it was basically conservatives who felt that they needed to have a voice of the center right within the policy process. It's not a party, it's a voice outside of it to influence other parties and influence governments. And that I think you're going to see more of, because people are feeling, like you're saying, that they're being left out of the conversation.
Now, I must confess, when you talked about opportunity in the book as being the sort of watchword for unifying conservatives, the first thing that popped into my head, and I think you actually touched on this in the book, was something Newt Gingrich 30 years ago called the Conservative Opportunity Society.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, okay, I know how that ended up.
Well,
and now Ted Cruz talks about it a lot today.
He does.
And I don't know why any conservative in Canada who was looking for a unifying, futuristic, future-looking thing would want to hitch their wagon to those two guys.
It's not hitching them to the two guys. It's hitching them to a concept that I think appeals to the three voter bases that we need. And the three voter bases that conservatives are missing right now is the urban conservative, urban-suburban, the new Canadian conservative, and the young conservative. Now, arguably, freedom as a concept, and I found this in my research and conversations with the conservatives I spoke to, does resonate, particularly with younger people. Like, there's no question. And if you're a young person, freedom is something that generally, you're looking for in your life. You're free now to do what you want, and you don't want to be blocked in those aspirations. So freedom is appealing, and that's a watchword I think that Pierre Poilievre is gaining currency with. But when you look at the other groups, the suburban family doesn't care, I don't think, Canada's the freest country on earth. We already have a sixth. By the way, we have a sixth freest country in the world. They care that they can't afford, now mortgage interest rates are rising. They can't afford maybe to live where they want. They can't afford to buy the groceries because of inflation that they were buying last year or last week. And Poilievre is hitting on those. This has been discussed in that context, but it's not you're free to buy groceries. You want the opportunity to buy groceries. And for that, you need economic policy that facilitates a job that will pay you enough too, because wages have not kept pace with the cost of living. This is the biggest issue.
How does the party, though, that a few elections ago, admittedly, but still in relatively recent memory, how does the party that ran on a barbaric cultural practices snitch line repave the road to immigrants and refugees and so on? Well,
that's why you can't hitch your wagon to something that is associated with racism in any way. And that is a big issue. That is probably because if that hadn't happened, I think there would be less of a sensitivity around this. But the party's own report that was done just before when I started writing the book, it was one of the pieces that I looked at. It came out in October, I think it was, or after October, November, I think it was, and it found that indeed the barbaric practices snitch line was still a factor in the October election. So there is that hangover. So the Conservatives
and that's
are already
7 years later.
Yes, they're already laboring under this conception that there's some kind of hidden agenda, anti-immigrant, anti-minority, racist, whatever you want to call it. And if you then tack onto that support for the convoy or what happened in Ottawa in particular, where there were flags, there were some racist elements, there were many that were not, but there were some. And they weren't called out sufficiently, in my view and other people's view. So you're associating yourself with that. And why would you do that? Because it's not going to help you with that cohort.
In our last few minutes here, you've been helpful to Jean Charest on his campaign for the leadership of the Conservative Party. Are you concerned, and look, the book's a good read, and you've laid a path forward, and it's a completely defensible argument, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Are you outnumbered in today's Conservative Party, and therefore there's not very many people, or not enough people who want to hear this message?
I think there's a lot of people. I've been going across the country with the book, and it's been really well received. People have said, my inbox has been filling up with people saying, I read your book, and thank you for saying what I've been thinking. Thank you for saying this. Thank you for laying this out. I've also been, I'll say it, the subject of a lot of attacks in this campaign by certain other camps and over my book. And I'm just thinking, wow, I guess it makes you nervous because you realize that maybe I'm saying something that's valid here, that's resonating with people, and you should listen to it. Because you know what? Whoever becomes leader has to understand, how are we going to win the next election? You've got to be able to keep the family together and grow the family. You cannot otherwise. So I'll take the attacks. I really don't care. I sort of have the badge of honor in a way that the power of the pen is real, I think.
But if it is Pierre Poilievre who ends up winning this thing, can you imagine him adopting any of the strategies you've put forward?
He's been using the word opportunity a fair bit lately. I've heard that in a few of his videos. I'm
taking credit for that?
I'm not going to take credit. You know what? His campaign has run the campaign they believe will win him the leadership. I personally don't believe that's the way to win the country. I think that you can win the country if you give the message that those missing voter bases, and also present conservatism as it really is, because people have an impression of conservatism that is false. It is not only about the individual. It is not only about, championing. It's also about community. It is about the small platoons of society, supporting the family as, an antithesis to the state. There's so much good stuff there that you can mine to say, like, this relates to the average person. Local government, local decision making. You want power. You want to have control over your life. Yes, you want it close. You want government close to the people. That's a hugely conservative concept, and no one's talking about that.
Well, we are here, and we thank you for coming in to talk to us about it. That's Tasha Keridan, author of The Right Path. Good to have you here, Tasha.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Maybe you think you know your city or town backwards and forwards. Well, for one Hamiltonian who just finished walking every street in that city, they actually do. Justin Chandler covers Hamilton Niagara for Ontario Hubs. He spoke to that determined pedestrian and joins us now for more. Welcome.
Hey there.
All right, so we have a photo of Anita. This is her out for a stroll. Tell us how she got into this sort of idea about going out for walks across all of Hamilton streets.
Yeah, Anita Joldersma. Several years ago, Labor Day 2014, she decided that she wanted to get out and do some more walking. She said that she was not well equipped. She didn't have proper shoes. She didn't have water. She went out in her neighborhood. She was getting blisters on her feet. But she said that somebody drove past her and said, "You keep it up." And she said, "Well, this is really hard for me. I'm having a tough time." And she said, "Oh, you're doing great. You keep it up." And Anita said she went home, swore she was never going to do it again. Then the next morning she woke up, and with that woman's encouragement, she was a walker. So she kept expanding, and eventually she decided that she was going to do every street in Hamilton, which she just completed in late August.
All right, when we talk about every street, we're talking about a couple thousand here. I want to pull up a map that Anita used to track her progress. Tell us what we're looking at here.
So this is the original map that Anita used when she was just doing the old city of Hamilton, so pre-amalgamation. So you're seeing here this transit map that she's used and marked everything out. And on the article online, you can see an even bigger map that she went where she just finished now with all the post-amalgamation parts of Hamilton. So Dundas, Ancaster, Flamborough, Glanbrook, all that good stuff.
Did she expand her walk outside of Hamilton as well?
No, so far she's just kept it to Hamilton. I asked her about expanding it. She said that would just be too much. It seemed like maybe she was considering a little bit, but she says that she thinks she's just going to keep her walking now to going out when she wants to, but not like a project to do, let's say, all of Niagara or something like that.
Now, I find this kind of fun. Some people might think walking can be a little boring. It's the same streets probably. They all sort of maybe look familiar or similar. Anita tried this, where she actually tried and used GPS to map her walk to spell out Hamilton. Tell me a little bit about this as well.
Yeah, well, that was one of the fun things that she tried to do, just, I guess, to get creative. She spelled out Hamilton. She showed me some other words. She tried to do like Merry Christmas, which was a little bit more difficult, just with all the different loops in the word. But that was something that she tried out. She likes using all sorts of different GPS and map tracking types of apps to log her progress.
Did Anita share sort of how her walks, how she sort of started her walks in terms of, is she listening to music? Is she sort of on a call? Is she listening to a podcast or anything like that?
She has bone conduction headphones, so she can hear all the sounds around her while listening to a podcast. She said she likes to listen to, she called it smarty pants stuff. So she said like This American Life, Serial, Radio Lab, that sort of thing. But she said she's also a Christian and she enjoys praying on her walks. And she said there was something really nice about praying her way across the city.
Very interesting. And tell me a little bit about this. She actually documents a lot of her walks on a blog as well, correct?
Yes, her blog is called Confessions of a Streetwalker, and she's written about her walks. She's written about the people that she's met. She shares photos, little updates. She's even got a TikTok account.
Very interesting. Now, pedestrian accidents have risen sharply in Hamilton. I think that's a whole other side of the story. Why does Anita believe every driver should walk in Hamilton to sort of understand the pedestrian experience?
Yeah, Anita said that by doing her walks, she's really learned to be careful and to be alert to avoid danger. And she says that doing so has made her a better driver. She says that she thinks perhaps people kind of get their license, they start driving, and then maybe they just don't walk so much and they don't really think about it. But she said now when she's behind the wheel, she's a lot more careful to check around her and just to make sure that there's no one coming up in a blind spot or anything like that, that it's really taught her sort of a new perspective when she's driving and when she's walking. So just to be a better road user.
Now, have you been getting on the road, walking a lot more?
Oh, I'm always walking.
That is true. I will admit, Justin Chandler is one of our regular walkers across the region. Justin, thank you so much.
Thank you. You take care.
For this first week of season 17 of The Agenda, something special for our week in review. An excerpt from Nam Kiwanuka's conversation with Steve Paikin to talk about his intimate new memoir on former Prime Minister John Turner.
Going back to that headline about him just being in Prime Minister for X amount of days, it kind of underscored the importance of Mr. Turner as Justice Minister under Pierre Trudeau. He took on criminal code reform that saw abortion and homosexuality decriminalized. He was also a staunch Catholic. How did he reconcile the two?
Wonderful question. And he just seemed to have an understanding that while as a Catholic, he could never abide abortion, as a Catholic, homosexuality would have been difficult for him. But as a minister of the Crown, with responsibilities to the population as a whole, he somehow found a way not to allow his personal beliefs affect what he was required to do on the job. And it's interesting, Prime Minister Trudeau, the current Prime Minister's father, was Justice Minister before him in the Pearson government. And he couldn't get those reforms through. Now, in fairness, it was a minority parliament at the time, but Pierre Trudeau, as Justice Minister, couldn't get those reforms through. John Turner takes over as Pierre Trudeau's Justice Minister, and he was able to do so. Admittedly, a majority government, but he also knew Parliament and loved Parliament.
What do you mean by that?
He had relationships on all sides of the House. He frequently, when he wanted to get a bill passed, would bring his opposition critics into a meeting with him, and he'd say, look, here's what I want to do. You tell me what you need so you can get this through your caucus, so I can get your support. I'm prepared to make these changes. It was a more collaborative style of government. And as a result, I think he got stuff through, like the reforms you just talked about, that others could not and did not do.
This book covers a period of time where things were very different from how they are now.
Yes.
And you write about Tommy Douglas and how he was once named by the greatest Canadian by the CBC. And you mentioned that people didn't know his stance on that issue, that particular issue. How did you approach writing a book for today's audience with stuff that happened back in history that people might be like, well, that's wrong?
The quote you're referring to came out of the 1968 federal election leaders debate, in which the reforms that Mr. Turner put forward on decriminalizing homosexuality and abortion were a subject, obviously, of the debate. It was the most controversial issue in the country at the time. And Tommy Douglas said, we can't take a criminal approach to these issues. We need to take a mental health approach. It's not behavior that ought to be criminalized. It's behavior that ought to be treated as a mental illness, homosexuality. Now, that's more than 50 years ago. Those views obviously do not stand up to the test of time. But that's what progressive people believed more than 50 years ago. And there are numerous examples throughout the book of, we're going through this all the time now, right? Where things that were said 50 years ago just don't really meet the test of time anymore, even among saints like Tommy Douglas.
Well, we mentioned that Turner spent 79 days as Prime Minister. What would you say was his downfall?
A whole bunch of things. Number one, he'd been in the private sector for 10 years when he decided to come out of political retirement and go back into public life to replace Pierre Trudeau. And the Liberals had been in power for too long at that point. And, there was I remember it well, it's 38 years ago, but there was a feeling in the land that the Liberals had been in for too long and they needed replacing. So number one, he's coming in at the end of a long Liberal reign and, people are ready for a change. Number two, he had the misfortune to go up against one of the truly gifted politicians in Canadian history in Brian Mulroney. The guy was good. I mean, you say what you want about his policies, the guy was good. Back-to-back majority governments, first guy since Sir John A. Macdonald for the Conservatives to do that. Mr. Turner was very rusty. We have to be honest about that. When he came back out of retirement, it wasn't very good. He didn't know the issues very well. His French was rusty. His political antennae were not as sharp as they once were when he was sort of the boy wonder justice minister and the youngest finance minister in 100 years before that. So
Did he lack confidence at that point?
he lacked. That was another thing as well. Yeah, for sure. There was that moment, I guess, after he became prime minister, or I guess on the verge of his becoming prime minister, when he sort of shared with his sister this notion that, Brenda, can I really do this? Am I really good enough to do this? And I remember her telling me, how can you say this? I mean, if you don't think you can do this, why are you doing this? She almost tried to buck him up at the time. Anyway, yeah, so there's a whole bunch of things. That's a theme throughout his life, right? That's a theme throughout his life. He's the boy wonder in so many circumstances, but does he actually have the self-confidence to pull this off?
Again, when he walked into the room, everyone's like, wow, people wanted to be around him. Yeah. Why was he so insecure? Did how he looked work against him?
There is a tendency to assume that people who are gorgeous have no brains, right? That is a kind of a reverse discrimination. And he suffered from that. You got to remember, this was a guy who was not only gorgeous, but as you pointed out, fastest man in the country at the time, Olympic level athlete. He had a bit of a jock personality. Funny thing is, he was a Rhodes Scholar. Pierre Trudeau was not. And yet people constantly looked at Pierre Trudeau as the brilliant intellectual, and John Turner as this sort of jockish guy whose intellect was overrated. And in fact, they were different kinds of guys, but John Turner was no slouch. I mean, the guy was every bit as intellectual in his own way as Pierre Trudeau was. I think that's fair to say.
That's just some of what we've covered this week. You can find more, including the full conversation, on our website, tvo.org, our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, or our Twitter feed, twitter.com/theagenda. And that's it for this Friday, September 9th, 2022. Monday, an update on Russia and the war in Ukraine. Also, what happened in the Conservative Party leadership race. I'm Jan Jaganathan. Thanks for watching TVO and for joining us online at tvo.org. Have a terrific weekend, and Steve, we'll see you again on Monday.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism. Ontario Hubs are made possible by the Barry and Laurie Green Family Charitable Trust and Goldie Feldman.